What things will be completely obsolete/forgotten in 20 years? I mean, broadcast TV is already kind of dying. I have an antenna basically just for football season because the NFL is stuck in the last century technology-wise, and over-the-air, OTA, or cable is the only way you can watch games on a TV. Sorry, I'm not paying $100 for Red Zone to watch games on my phone. But I've seen what's on OTA and beyond sports, news, and primetime shows. It's pretty dead. Other than football games, I haven't actually sat down and watched actual TV programming in years. Heck, if I don't include cable TV, it's been over a decade. I honestly don't see how it could last past 2030. These are already mainly obsolete here. The only place I regularly use one now is the gas pump and a few small restaurants that have older POS systems. We've finally mostly moved to chips, usually chip and nothing transactions, PIN for debit. Contactless is growing in adoption, but many larger retailers have been shying away from it due to a combination of higher fraud rates, implementation cost, additional fees sometimes attached to these transactions, and incompatibility with existing systems. Around me it's mostly small businesses and convenience stores that take it. Streaming is just gonna become cable by a different name. Disney is already bundling their 3 apps. HBO Max is owned by AT&T and Peacock is owned by Comcast, both big telecoms. They're not gonna forego income, they're just gonna fold what was once exclusive to linear TV into their streaming services and jack up the price, probably with a discount if you have AT&T or Comcast internet service. And without net neutrality, there's nothing stopping them from throttling competing streaming services. It's gonna come full circle. Today's video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, one of the biggest mobile role-playing games of 2019, and it's totally free. Currently almost 10 million users have joined Raid over the last 6 months, and it's one of the most impressive games in its class with detailed models, environments, and smooth 60 frames per second animations. All the champions in the game can be customized with unique gear that changes your strategic buffs and abilities. The dungeon bosses have some ridiculous skills of their own, and figuring out the perfect party and strategy to overtake them's a lot of fun. Currently with over 300,000 reviews, Raid has almost a perfect score on the Play Store. The community is growing fast and the highly anticipated new Faction Wars feature is now live. You might even find my squad out there in the arena. It's easier to start now than ever with Raid's program for new players. You get a new daily login reward for the first 90 days that you play in the game. So what are you waiting for? Go to the video description, click on the special links, and you'll get 50,000 silver and a free epic champion as part of the new player program to start your journey. Good luck and I'll see you there. And Teslas can be unlocked from your phone. My boss was telling me about this. She went out to the vets in her car, which started just fine. Got to the vets, did what she needed. Couldn't get back in the car. She had forgotten her phone. The car had started because her husband was standing next to it when she started it, but now he wasn't there and her phone wasn't there. Couldn't start it? Makes me realize, I like my key. It's much harder to forget I have my key because I have to get it out to unlock the car and start the engine. I don't even like keyless, for the same reason as the phone issue above, and it's easier to unlock from a distance with a range extender, so easier to steal. Landline phones will still exist, but the underlying technology is what will have changed. A lot of phone systems are switching to a VoIP-based or other technologies. One of the advantages of landlines is that they run on such low power requirements that they don't need much juice to run. I remember in the 90s there was a massive power outage that took down most of the power grid for a lot of the western US. You could still call people who weren't on cell phones, which were a luxury device at the time, because the landline infrastructure was not affected. I highly doubt it. Sure, you might not use it as much as other people, but there's a significant amount of work that relies on phones, VoIP or landlines. As someone working in a building without cell reception or Wi-Fi calling, it doesn't seem to be feasible. I'm in a Fortune 100 company. About half of our R&D groups do not communicate or disclose any information over non-secure communications. About 2/3 of R&D do not have cell phone access inside their labs or manufacturing floors. I'm only going to speak on streamers, but no chance they go away. They are only growing. And TV networks are starting to realize the importance of streaming. For instance, Monday Night Football had an alternative broadcast with the Manning brothers. The actual broadcast on ABC brought in 15 million viewers and the Mannings brought in 800K. They were mainly just shooting the shit during the game and I loved every second of it. I would consider that streaming. Gen Z and younger millennials love that type of stuff. If it become marketed better, I could see it being easily 3 million. And they have a contract to do it for 10 games a season over the next 3 seasons. Also, Amazon is probably going to get exclusive rights to one of the prime time game days in the near future, and that would allow them to partner with streamers to watch their team play. This is just a small portion of why streamers are going to become even bigger in the future. There are so many different categories on Twitch, it's insane. On Twitch, all video games don't make up the same amount of viewers in the just chatting category normally. And there are so many different things you can find. Cooking, fitness, and slots come to mind, and those are popular and don't have anything to do with video games. I've been working on a story/book for the last year that involves streamers in the future. Right now I'm basing the story in 2040 and it involves how streamers are the main source of news and entertainment. Newsrooms are obsolete. Obtaining news is just watching different streamers on a service like Twitch. They're essentially a streamer who has people working for them gathering information from their own hired reporters. I think streamers will only grow and grow as time goes on. People will become attached to streamers since they're becoming more and more diverse, and will continue to do so as time goes on. We're just seeing the tip of this iceberg in terms of where streaming will go. Just chatting was a big shift, and political streamers like Hassan will become another big shift. Bringing politics into streaming is something I believe will bring more and more younger people to care about politics and be more engaged. I think we'll see this happen at a more progressive pace in the next 3 years as well. Influencers, I think, will be in a similar situation, unfortunately. I don't think they're going away anytime soon. While many are very irrelevant even with millions of followers, that means there are millions of followers willing to hit that button, which is all an influencer needs to keep themselves going. For those who care, the story I'm writing follows 2 main characters who work for one of the largest streamers in the world who is mostly anonymous. The Anon streamer has millions of viewers per day, and this Anon streamer is against everything about the current oppressive political climate in America. There is a push from the government that he should be labeled as a terrorist, and his fans should be considered potentially dangerous. After there's an attack on a major political figure who is promoting a controversial bill which would require everyone's internet activity to be recorded for state and federal authorities. The media under control of the government goes all out on a campaign that the Anon streamer is the leader of a terrorist organization. Some songs that are being criticized hardly by today's audience are going to be looked at with affection by tomorrow's one. It's funny to see how in YouTube videos of older songs that were hated by a lot of people, albeit also loved by many, they're being treated as music that's just not made today, as though it was some sort of masterpiece. The truth is, almost all songs lie in some mediocre in between of good enough and not that bad. Of the ones that survive, a lot are going to be good stuff, but a lot of them will also be enhanced through the lens of nostalgia. It's already basically obsolete, but in high school, just 11 years ago, one of my friend group's favorite things to do was hop in my car, drive out onto the highway, take a random exit we had never taken before, and find our way back home via back roads. I mean, I remember May 2009, we literally did it every day after school. And it wasn't just getting lost and finding your way back, it was more than that. We would grow up on those rides. We would talk about life and the future and where we are going and where we've been. We would look at the towns we passed, names unknown, and speculate how life was there. If we found a free chair, we would pick it up off the side of the road and wrestle in the car over who got to be king and sit in it. Sometimes we would get scared cause we didn't know where we were. Sometimes we would get excited cause we didn't know where we were. And eventually, after hours and hours, we would find our way home. I can't even describe it honestly. I'm in my 20s, but kids these days just won't get it. It's not the same when you know you have a GPS, you know you have a safe way out. Something about truly finding your way back home meant you had to truly find yourself. I actually did this by myself back around that time. Whenever I was upset or overwhelmed with life, I would just drive. I was lucky because I did have a Garmin back in the day, my biggest Christmas gift at the time, so if I ever got lost I have a safety net. I did have to use it a couple of times after a half tank of gas was used and I needed to go back home XD. I found so many beautiful roads and explored many areas that I was able to share with friends just by driving back roads. I love this comment. I think suburban high schoolers know more about the 20-mile radius around their homes than most of the parents/homeowners in those areas. This is because they spend so much time just driving or biking or walking around their towns aimlessly. I'm 30 now and recently bought a house. It occurred to me the other day that I'll never know my new neighborhood or any neighborhood as well as I knew the neighborhood where my childhood home was. I just don't have much of a reason to drive through all the surrounding subdivisions and back roads now. I'm not sure they'll be obsolete or forgotten, at least not in 20 years. They have the ability to change drastically into random/different genres. And we're already seeing that. The current phase is turning to more rated R. We could see them turn to horror, which the next Doctor Strange is supposed to be. They're so encompassing that they can make sure they're consistently relevant for a long, long time. Anyway, comic books have been around a long-ass time and they're only growing more popular right now. If comic book and superhero movies ever fall out of fashion, it's gonna be more than 20 years. The problem with futurists is that they can't ever think of the present. How many cars do you know on the road today that don't even have cruise control? It's not even standard on a 2021 Kia Rio. I had that on my 1987 F-150. That's a more than 30-year difference. Knowing that, do you honestly think that all cars will be self-driving in the same time period? The answer is most likely not. Not for some kooky conspiracy theory about auto manufacturers and insurance companies collaborating with big oil or whatnot. But because people will use what's available. Practicality tends to demolish dreams. Depends heavily on the culture of your country. Germany has an excellent standard of living and is on par with the US on most things quality of life, yet people here are hell-bent on staying cash-based. Only thanks to COVID, most small businesses have finally started accepting card payments over here, but even that is still mostly debit only. You'll have to snatch physical money, including coins, from the cold, dead bodies of future Germans for the foreseeable future. And my country is far from the only example here, especially if you take a look at places that are still developing their economies. Tactile interfaces. Children's toys display the change the best. There's been an obvious shift towards using pens/tablets, buttons, screens, and away from knobs/switches/levers. There's significantly less technology emerging that employs tactile interfacing as its primary mode of user interaction. Most things have a touch screen, voice command, gesture recognition, fingerprint sensors, and / or facial recognition. You see the same trend in the automotive industry. Newer vehicle configurations have less and less knobs/switches, favoring a reliance on touch screen/menu interfaces. There are self-serve touch-screen kiosks at McDonald's. Even the recycling center machines in your local grocery store are moving to touch screens, not to mention self-checkout. Phones have power and volume buttons, nothing else anymore. In 20 years, if we continue on the same trajectory as the last 20 years of technological advancement, I think we'll be on the cusp of biotechnical integration. That last sentence is a pretty hot take. The trajectory that's causing evening to go with touch screens instead of buttons has less to do with the ease of user interface, but rather the fact that one touch screen is cheaper than 50 buttons/switches/dials/ etc. That kind of biotechnology integration doesn't exist at all yet. I don't see it becoming cheap enough to replace touch screens in mass production. On the contrary, touch screens were pretty common already in the early 2000s. The Nintendo DS was released in 2004, so they were already able to be mass-produced. I think the automotive industry might see a pushback to touch screens everywhere, as they take eyes off the road where tactile controls can be felt out. Of course, autonomous vehicles would make this a non-issue, so if big moves are made in that area. TikTok will go away once the older folks get it? That's how it works. The youth was on Facebook until their parents joined. Then the youth went to Instagram, but their parents joined that too, along with every brand you've ever thought about buying. Snapchat became the new thing, until the uncool relatives found it and ads clogged it up. They won't go away, they'll just enter the enthusiast market. Well, they already have. If you're an AV nerd who has their own home theater and are obsessed with having the best picture and sound for your movie viewing experience, Blu-rays and UHD have the best bitrate available for the average consumer. 4K Netflix doesn't compare to a 4K disc. Basically the same as people who prefer vinyl/CDs over Spotify. Also there are the collectors. There will always be the movie nerds whose disposable income goes onto the special edition versions of their favorite films. I know because I am one, so studios will still churn them out. Depends heavily on the culture of your country. Germany has an excellent standard of living and is on par with the US on most things quality of life, yet people here are hell-bent on staying cash-based. Only thanks to COVID, most small businesses have finally started accepting card payments over here, but even that is still mostly debit only. You'll have to snatch physical money, including coins, from the cold, dead bodies of future Germans for the foreseeable future. And my country is far from the only example here, especially if you take a look at places that are still developing their economies.